The Sunday lunch tradition at my parents' house had been going on for 12 years, ever since my older sister Victoria had her first child. Every week, the extended family gathered around the large oak dining table in their suburban home, sharing food, stories, and what my mother called family bonds. The house itself was a statement, a 4-bedroom colonial in an upscale neighborhood, filled with family photos that seemed to feature Victoria's children far more prominently than mine. But for my son Daniel and me, these lunches had become something else entirely. They had become a weekly reminder of everything we apparently weren't. Daniel was 11 years old, stocky and solid, with my build rather than his mother's slender frame. My ex-wife had left when Daniel was 3, remarried someone wealthy who owned a chain of dental practices, and rarely saw our son any more beyond the minimum required by our custody agreement. It was just the two of us, managing a modest life in a 2-bedroom apartment, while my sister Victoria and her husband lived in a house 3 times the size of ours and drove cars that cost more than I made in a year working as a systems analyst for a mid-sized company. Victoria had 3 children. Sophia was 13, tall and athletic, captain of her middle school volleyball team. Marcus was 12, lean and confident, a competitive swimmer who trained 6 days a week. Emma was 10, graceful and poised, taking ballet lessons at an expensive studio downtown. All 3 were on competitive sports teams, took music lessons twice weekly, and attended the best schools in the district, where class sizes were small and resources abundant. And all 3 had learned from their mother and grandmother that they were superior to their cousin Daniel in every measurable way, though the measurements they used were carefully selected to ensure their advantage. "I got an A- on my history test," Sophia announced, waving her phone to show the grade notification. "Mr. Peterson said it was one of the best essays he's read all semester." "That's wonderful, sweetheart," my mother gushed. "You work so hard. I'm so proud of you." Marcus jumped in immediately. "I got a B+ on my science project. The teacher said my presentation skills were excellent." "Both of you are so accomplished," my mother beamed. "It's wonderful to see young people taking their education seriously." Daniel continued eating his mashed potatoes quietly. He had learned long ago that speaking up at these lunches only invited comparisons he would lose, at least in my mother's eyes. My mother turned to him, her expression shifting from pride to something that looked like concern but felt like judgment. "And how are your grades, Daniel? Are you keeping up with your schoolwork?" "He's doing fine," I said before Daniel could answer. "Fine isn't excellent," my mother replied. "At his age he should be pushing himself. Maybe if he focused less on eating and more on studying he'd do better. Exercise and discipline build character." Daniel's fork stopped moving. His face flushed red, that particular shade that meant he was fighting tears. Slowly, deliberately he pushed his plate away from himself, the food barely touched. "Mom," I said, my voice tight with controlled anger. "I'm just trying to help," she said. "Children need guidance. They need to understand that success requires sacrifice. Victoria's children understand that. They're disciplined, focused, healthy." Victoria smiled, that thin, superior smile she'd perfected over the years. "The kids do work very hard. We've instilled strong values in them. Academic excellence, physical fitness, personal responsibility." "Is that right?" I asked. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder. "Let's talk about academic excellence, then." I opened the folder and spread several documents across the table. Test results, grade reports, standardized assessment scores. All of them had Daniel's name at the top. "Daniel's most recent math test," I said, pointing to the first sheet. 100%. Perfect score. The teacher wrote a note saying it was the highest mark in the class and that Daniel finished 20 minutes early, then helped other students with their problems. My mother picked up the paper, her reading glasses sliding down her nose as she studied it. "His English literature exam," I continued, sliding another sheet forward. 98%. The teacher commented that his analysis of the novel showed remarkable depth of understanding for a 6th grader. Victoria's smile froze on her face. Her children went quiet. "Science test," I said, adding another paper to the pile. 100%. Bonus questions included. The teacher noted that Daniel's explanation of the scientific method was more thorough than the textbooks. "History test," I added, sliding over another sheet. 97%. The teacher said his essay on the Industrial Revolution demonstrated college-level analytical thinking. I pulled out a larger document. These are his standardized test scores from last month. 99th percentile in mathematics nationwide. 97th percentile in reading comprehension. 98th percentile in science. 96th percentile in writing. That means Daniel scored higher than 99 out of every 100 students his age in the entire country in math. I let that sink in for a moment. The average percentile for gifted program qualification is 95th. Daniel exceeded that in every single category. These scores qualified him for advanced programs at 3 different universities. The table had gone completely silent. My father, who usually stayed neutral in family conflicts, leaned forward to look at the documents. For comparison, I said, looking directly at Victoria, would you like to share Sophia's most recent test scores? Or Marcus's standardized results? Victoria's face turned red. My children do very well in school. I'm sure they do, I said. Sophia's A- is commendable. Marcus's B+ shows effort. But let's be accurate about who's excelling and who's just doing adequately. I pulled out another document. This is a letter from Daniel's school principal. It's a recommendation for the district's gifted and talented program. The principal writes that Daniel is among the top 1% of students she has encountered in her 20-year career. She's recommending him for advanced placement in 3 subjects next year. My mother stared at the papers spread across the table as if she were seeing them for the first time, which in a sense she was. I had never brought Daniel's achievements to these lunches before because they were never welcomed, never celebrated, always dismissed or minimized. There's more, I said. Daniel was selected for the state mathematics competition next month. He'll be competing against 8th and 9th graders. His math teacher says he has a real chance of placing in the top 10. I laid out another letter. This is from the Johns Hopkins Center for Talented Youth. Daniel qualified for their summer program based on his SAT scores. It's a program specifically designed for exceptionally gifted students who score in the top percentiles on college entrance exams while still in elementary and middle school. SAT scores? My father interjected. He's 11. The program has 6th graders take the SAT to assess their abilities, I explained. Daniel scored a 650 on the mathematics section. That's higher than the national average for high school seniors taking the test. For context, the average SAT math score for seniors is around 520. Daniel, at 11 years old, scored 130 points above that average. Victoria was scrolling through her phone now, probably trying to verify whether what I was saying was even possible. So when you ask if he's keeping up with his schoolwork, I said, turning back to my mother, the answer is that he's not just keeping up. He's excelling. He's surpassing. He's demonstrating abilities that put him in the top fraction of a percent of students his age. Then why didn't you tell us? My mother asked, her voice smaller than before. Because every time I try you change the subject, I said. Last month when I mentioned Daniel's math competition selection, you immediately started talking about Sophia's volleyball tournament. 2 months ago when I brought up his science fair award, you asked if he was eating properly and suggested I limit his portions. I picked up the papers and tapped them into a neat stack. You've spent years telling Daniel directly and indirectly that he's not good enough. That if he just tried harder, ate less, exercised more, disciplined himself better, maybe then he could be successful like his cousins. But the truth is he's been more successful academically than any child at this table. You just never bothered to notice because you were too focused on his weight. Daniel was staring at his empty plate, his shoulders tense. I put my hand on his shoulder. Your comment about eating less and doing better, I said to my mother, was based on an assumption. You assumed that because Daniel is heavier than your other grandchildren he must be lazy, undisciplined, unsuccessful. You saw his body and decided you knew everything about his character and capabilities. I didn't mean it that way, my mother protested. Yes you did, I said. You've meant it that way for years. Every comment about his weight, every suggestion about diet and exercise, every comparison to his cousins, all of it has been based on the belief that his body reflects his worth. But Daniel's worth has nothing to do with his weight. His intelligence, his kindness, his work ethic, his achievements. Those are what matter. And all of them are exceptional. Victoria finally spoke. We've always been supportive of Daniel. Have you? I asked. As I have a different memory. I remember last Christmas when Marcus got a new gaming system and a gift card worth $300 for getting honor roll, and Daniel, who had straight A's in all honors classes, got a book about healthy eating habits and a gym membership coupon. I remember Thanksgiving when Sophia's science project about plant growth was displayed prominently on the mantle for everyone to admire, while Daniel's award-winning project about renewable energy stayed in his backpack because nobody asked to see it. I remember Easter when you took all the grandchildren out for ice cream to celebrate the end of the school year, except you suggested Daniel get a salad instead. My father cleared his throat. We may have shown some favoritism, he admitted quietly. That wasn't right. It wasn't just favoritism, I said. It was erasure. Daniel's accomplishments have been invisible to you because you decided years ago what kind of child he was. Fat meant lazy. Lazy meant unsuccessful. Unsuccessful meant unworthy of attention or praise. I stood up, gesturing for Daniel to do the same. He grabbed his jacket quickly, clearly ready to leave. We won't be coming to Sunday lunches anymore, I announced. Not until you can treat Daniel with the same respect and celebration you show his cousins. Not until you can acknowledge his achievements without immediately pivoting to criticism about his appearance. Please don't do this, my mother said, tears forming in her eyes. We're family. Then act like it, I said. Daniel is your grandson. He's brilliant, hardworking, and kind. He deserves to be celebrated, not criticized. He deserves to eat Sunday lunch without having his body analyzed and his worth questioned. We walked toward the door. Behind us, I could hear my mother crying and Victoria trying to defend herself to our father. The cousins were silent, probably processing what they had just witnessed. In the car, Daniel was quiet for several minutes. Then he said, "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did," I replied. "You deserve to have someone defend you. You deserve to have your grandmother know the truth." "Do you think she'll change?" he asked. "I don't know," I admitted. "But I know we won't go back until she does. You're too important to me to let anyone, even family, make you feel worthless." He nodded slowly, looking out the window. "The math competition is in 3 weeks. Will they come watch?" "If they're invited," I said. "And if they promise to be supportive, not critical." "Okay," he said softly. 3 days later my mother called. She apologized without excuses or justifications. She asked if she could attend one of Daniel's tutoring sessions, where he helped younger students with math. She wanted to see him in his element, she said. She wanted to understand the child she had failed to see. I let Daniel decide. He agreed cautiously. My mother showed up at the library where Daniel volunteered twice a week. She sat in the back and watched as he patiently explained fractions to a struggling third grader, breaking down complex concepts into understandable pieces. She saw other parents thank him, saw the librarian praise his teaching ability, and saw the way younger kids lit up when he helped them understand something difficult. Afterward, she took us both out for ice cream, real ice cream, not frozen yogurt or sorbet or any of the healthier alternatives she usually suggested. She asked Daniel about the math competition, about his classes, about what he wanted to study in college someday. She didn't mention his weight once. It wasn't perfect. Old habits resurfaced sometimes. But there was effort now, an awareness that words mattered and that achievement came in many forms. The Sunday lunches eventually resumed, but the dynamic had shifted. Daniel's successes were acknowledged alongside his cousins. His achievements were celebrated, not minimized. And when he won 3rd place in the state mathematics competition, beating students 3 and 4 years older than him, my mother was there in the audience. She cheered louder than anyone when his name was called, and she cried with pride when he accepted his award. It had taken confrontation and consequences for her to see what had been in front of her all along. But she saw it now. And that, finally, was enough.